Welcome back to the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast. This is another special interview show, and we are going to be talking all things British, Japanese wrestling with someone who has managed someone that has been in Japan, a part of the United Empire, was the Rev Pro champion until a certain Oku come along. We'll talk about that in a bit more detail in a minute, but it is Mr. Lord Gideon Grey. Good evening.
Good evening. How are we all doing?
We are good. It's getting cold now, though, man.
It's nice and warm in here. I've got blackout curtains. I'm in a very small room and the heating's on full blast, so I'm nice and toasty my end.
See, this you can afford to have your heating on.
Of course, of
That's
course.
that's a good thing. Now it is getting cold over here in the UK, but what a great way to start. Thank you, obviously, for coming on and giving some words of wisdom for us this evening. I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. We're going to start just look 2024 UK scene. How has it been from your vantage point?
Well, it's been a kind of year of feeling like it's slowly rebuilding.
Hmm.
Obviously, a lot of stuff's happened. A lot of stuff has happened. This year has been absolutely crap. In many ways. Not just the British wrestling scene, the world, everything going on, lots of people struggling. Money is tight for everyone. And so, of course, it's appreciated when people do come out and go to watch independent wrestling and the British wrestling scene. But there's faces that we've not necessarily seen before. Zazaya, massive name now. Michael Oku did well as a champion. Bless him. So sad he lost that bout. But it's been a interesting year, shall we say?
It
A lot's
certainly
going on.
has. Yeah, it certainly has. We're lucky. We partner with Ignite over at Shenley Road, and we have our own championship there, which is defended on every show. And we try to bring in, a name of the independents. And we had obviously like Luke Jacobs was in there. We had him on our July show. We've done two shows with Ignite where we've done the whole show with them. Like we've co-produced it, co-sponsored it, selling out. And you see some great names in there. Let's say you mentioned Luke Jacobs being one. But funny enough, you mentioned Zazoya, and it was kind of going to be something I was going to do a bit later on in the show. But as you've mentioned him, I'm gonna mention it now. It was quite interesting recently because the WWE announced a massive tour of Europe before WrestleMania weekend, right? Which was quite amazing. Did you know? I don't know.
I had no idea.
You didn't. Right. There you go. And it was quite interesting because there's places like Belgium. There was going to Belgium, they're going to Spain and all this. And I was thinking, like, I wonder whether someone in the WWE or someone working for them has looked on perhaps a Rev Pro on demand or something like that and seen the likes of Zazoya, Mike D, and people like that, and have perhaps thought, hang on a minute, it might be worth going to. I don't know, but it's been crazy for that. A lot of new international breakout stars have come out this year.
There's definitely there's good wrestling everywhere. Is
Mm.
the issue.
Yeah.
You can't throw a stone without finding good wrestling. So it's not truly surprising that this has been a year of people coming out of different countries, coming across to England, refreshing the scene, making a name for themselves. Because I feel that's kind of been the purpose of Britain for the last decade in terms of professional wrestling. Is it somewhere that you know you're not necessarily going to get to Japan because they hire very few people out there.
Mm.
You're not necessarily going to go to America and do the scene over there. Prohibitively expensive to get a visa, prohibitively expensive to live out there. You know, too far, too much driving. How any of them do it, I don't know. But Britain, lovely in between. It's not quite as big as either of those scenes. However, everyone's eyes are on the British scene.
Yeah.
Everyone watches it because it's traditionally since the old world of sports days, even before then, when you've got the Snake Pit in Wigan, you've got your catch wrestling, actual wrestling going through. It's always been a hotspot for wrestling. Americans, you know, they do what they do with it. That's fine. But the sport of professional wrestling really, I feel, has a kind of, historical background in Britain. And so it's not surprising that people still look here as one of those, hot spots for professional wrestling.
Yeah, definitely so. And you mentioned somebody else there, and I know you were very gutted, as you said, to see him lose the Rev Pro Championship. Because, but it was quite interesting because you played a pivotal role in a lot of ways. You've obviously managed the Great O'Khan, and when Michael come into Rev Pro, Great O'Khan pretty much decimated him. And then, funnily enough, the first, and maybe it was a bit of bad luck for you guys, the first Rev Pro show that I ever attended was the time that Michael actually beat the Great Okan.
Oh, so it's your fault then. Yeah. Okay.
Ultimately, yeah. Sorry
Wonderful.
about that. You can blame the podcast for that for sure. But did you sort of, all seriousness aside, did you know back then that Michael was going to be the weight, the weight of the world's going to be on his shoulders? He's going to be as good as he is now, or was it one of those things that gradually over time piece bits together and it all just comes in?
Listen, I've known about Michael for many years. He's always been a he's always been entertaining, and that's key. You can't go anywhere in professional wrestling unless you capture people's attention. Uh, from the day he stepped in and broke his wrist, reversing a wrist lock, which I will take every opportunity I can to remind people that that happened, to the day he, broke his wrist reversing a headlock, and again, take every opportunity I can to remind people that that happened. Michael's always been genuinely charismatic and genuinely very talented in the ring, and people have just kind of started to catch on. And I feel that's the thing that a lot of wrestling fans miss, is that they don't understand what talent is and they don't understand what they're watching. A lot of people will have famous name and that's all that matters, which I get, and it's wonderful. If that's what you want in professional wrestling, like going to a concert and seeing, I don't know any pop star's name, Billy Joel Osmond, I'm sure he's still popular. Going to a pop show and watching one of those, if you want to go to a professional wrestling show just to see a foreign talent coming over, oh, it's the only time I'll ever get to see them. Wonderful, great. But if you're there to actually enjoy, the sport of professional wrestling, and you're watching people grow in front of you, and you're, invested from day one, and you kind of start seeing, oh, this person is good. That to me is more rewarding as not just someone involved in professional wrestling, but as a fan of professional wrestling. I like seeing that. I like seeing the evolution of people.
Yeah, you certainly saw the evolution of Michael, even in just that short space of time. As you said, you knew beforehand, about him and what he was like. But as you as a professional wrestler, and I always, I get some nice privileges. I get to meet some of the guys. We're quite friendly with some of them now with the podcast and what we've done. But as somebody on the actual circuit yourself, if you've got someone that wants to become, a teenager that wants to start out in wrestling or is starting out on the scene, what advice would you give them? Because it's not just always about, obviously, you got to pay your dues. You got to go there. You got to help set up. You got to put the chairs out. You got to sort the merch out. But is it, and this is going to probably sound like a real stupid question, but is it still that you've still got to resonate with that fan base wherever that you are? Because if you don't, ultimately you may not get booked again because the fans just ain't into you at that specific location, but could be 50 miles down the road.
Listen, as far as that goes, fans don't matter.
Mm.
Never have, never will. No offense to anyone out there. You just don't. What matters in that respect, if you are starting out and you're on the road and you're paying your dues, you're storing up all that resentment for further down your career because it's a ridiculous practice. You're not getting paid to set up the ring. You're not getting paid for all the hours of driving you're doing. You're not getting paid for sacrificing your time. You're not getting paid for hurting yourself to entertain anyone. You're not getting paid for the days where you can't get out of bed because your neck's so sore. You're not getting paid for, days where you try and bend over. Oh, you can't get back up again because your back's sore. When you're in that position, the only person that you really have to please is the promoter. Mm. Whoever is running that show, if they like you and if they want to give you opportunities, they will. If they don't like you, they're never going to use you. They'll use you, especially for, setting things up. Don't get me wrong. They'll absolutely use you for that. They'll use you for selling merchandise. They'll use you for checking tickets on the door. They'll use you for whatever they can use you for free, because that's the way of the world. If they don't like you, if they don't rate you, they'll never use you in a wrestling ring. So work on your technique. Ignore all the big moves. Ignore all the flashy stuff. Work on your technique. Work on body control. Work on mannerisms. Work on who you are as a person. Figure out what makes you you. Figure out what's entertaining about you. Figure out what would make people watch you. Once you've done that, simple. And
Mm.
also, don't pay dues.
Yeah.
Absolutely don't. Do what you can to get on a show that you're good enough, and then stop immediately. Make people come to you, don't go to them. Know what you're worth.
Interesting. You hear other things about I want to do this, I want to do that, but it's simply as if you're good enough and you impress the person that you need to impress, everything else just comes, with
Yeah.
you'll get those bookings and everything comes like that. Because obviously you managed the Great Khan, you had some stuff in the United Empire in Japan. I wanted to touch on that because there's not many, as you say, they don't hire many, and there's two perhaps that have broken that mold. One of them is obviously Zack Sabre Jr. And I've got a theory on that a little bit, and I'll go into that a bit later. And the other one, obviously, Gabe Kidd that we see, and he's just a madman. And I've seen obviously Driller as well over there a little bit and doing some stuff over there. What is it though about? So, for example, Zack Sabre Jr. has come out and he's now said like he doesn't really care about going to WWE, doesn't really care about going to AEW. He'll make sporadic appearances everywhere, but he wants to cement that career over in New Japan and be a cult hero for argument's sake. What is it about, say, for example, New Japan now that makes someone like Zack Sabre Jr. want to do that?
Because it's the only promotion in the world that's doing professional wrestling. As
Yeah.
simple as that. It's if you like professional wrestling as a product, as a sports product, with the history and the technique of the sport, as opposed to enjoying professional wrestling as a spectacle, the only place that you can really get that is New Japan.
Hmm.
Simple as.
Yeah, I was literally going to say because a lot of Zach's very obviously technical stuff that he does is unbelievable. But I feel right now, even in obviously even in England to a degree, technical stuff is a real niche thing. I watched like a John Gresham match for argument's sake, and he took on Charlie Dempsey on TNA, and there was reports from the crowd saying, "Oh, they was chanting boring and stuff." I loved it because it was that whole hold for hold, sort of move for move, technical stuff that they do in a ring. Do you think it's kind of a lost art in other areas other than Japan?
Not so much. In Britain, you've got some incredible technical wrestlers in
Mm.
Britain, and you never know. Absolutely never know. Because there is following that model. Americans, God bless them. God bless them. Watch their Super Bowl,
Yeah.
watch their baseball, watch any of their sports products. They have understood the needs of the fans that go and watch that to be distracted by shiny things at every possible opportunity and to be entertained by fireworks and spectacle as much as possible. And I get that. That's tremendous,
Mm.
That's understandable. Your average person in America, they're going out to something, they pay money, they want to be entertained. That's fantastic. They don't want to have to work for it. They don't want to have to understand the intricacies. They don't want to have to understand, oh, if you do hook someone and force them, that's just what's going to happen. They're going to move in this way. If you do this to someone, hey, that's really going to fucking hurt. They don't want to understand this. And I get that. That's fine. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. If that's the way that you enjoy wrestling, that's great. But that's what America does so well, is that entertainment product, is that grand spectacle product. And they've decided because of that grand spectacle product, not necessarily something that they're interested in, having 30 minutes of pure technical wrestling in, arena or, football stadium or wherever it is. They don't want to have those in front of a crowd that won't care, And look at Danielson, prime example.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. Came over, did the camps over here, learned a bit of the style, loved it, took it back over there. When he was in Ring of Honor, a smaller independent promotion back in the day, he was busting out all sorts of technique. He was having hour-long matches, and true dedicated, like, people in America that wanted that went and watched, and it was great. When he got onto a bigger stage, limited what he did. Understandable. He worked for where he was, and that's just what it is. But if you're into that professional wrestling is a sport style of professional wrestling, nowhere's going to really cater for you as well as New Japan does.
No, definitely so. I mean, I love Zach's stuff. I love watching it. It's incredible some of the stuff that he comes out with, or some of the moves that he pulls out is just you just sit there and go, how? In a lot of cases. But it kind of leads me on, and I said before we started that I'm going to give you my pet peeve with. And it's a listen, it's one of those things. My pet peeve is somebody else's obsession with wrestling. But what I find quite annoying on British wrestling is every time I go to a show, it just feels very samey. So it's like every match has to be strong style. And for me, I like that, but I don't. I would like it. So for example, I'll give you. I used to like a shows a bit like a circus, right? You'd have your Agile Blancs, so the 2024 version, right? You'd have him in another like a cruiserweight lucha libre match. You would have the strong style. You would have technical tag team or something like that. You'd have your championship matches. I just find it now that they're all ultra competitive. And for me, I want most times out of 10, you want to book your champions strong, right? Because I always believe your champion should be booked, not necessarily like a squash or anything like that. But I find that too many times that a champion will go into a match now and it would be so close to him losing nearly every single match. But I don't. That's how I wouldn't book a champion, if that makes sense. I'm not a booker, so it's probably the reason why, right? But I just believe. I suppose maybe I'm old school, maybe I'm old, but I just think that I don't mind watching a 6 minute enhancement squash match occasionally. And I know from an independent perspective, you want to come in and get your shit in. You want to, do what you need to do because you're there maybe once. But I don't know if it's just me, but I just miss that about some in the independents.
I find okay, so a couple of things here.
Yeah.
First off, there's everyone puts too much pressure on themselves
Mm.
wherever they are. You want to go out there and you want to showcase yourself at your best. Fantastic. That's only going to take away from what you can do, in my opinion. The moment I got good at wrestling was when I stopped caring.
Yeah.
In its entirety. Like, stopped caring about what fans thought, stopped caring about what promoters thought, stopped caring what I thought, and just enjoyed myself. That's when you find something that truly resonates. But a lot of people go into your places like, your Progresses, your Rev Pros, or the equivalent in America. You're like Noah's or DDTs in Japan. They're going into these smaller places and they're going, this is my chance. Everyone's going to watch this. I want to look good. I want this to be a fantastic thing. This is going to enhance me as a person. It's going to do wonders for my career. It's not. It's really not. Everyone just puts too much pressure on themselves, not really realizing if you're there for a reason. You've made an impression on the right people at the right time. They want to see what you can do in the ring. Just relax. Enjoy yourself. Don't try too hard. Especially don't take stupid risks. But that's just me. But another thing is when you're going to watch professional wrestling, I alluded to this on Twitter. No one saw it because I'm not an important person. But wrestling to me is very much like the Copenhagen theorem, right? You can the act of observation changes the reality of whatever you're watching, right? If it's subatomic particles, if you're accurately deciding where it is in space, then you cannot determine its momentum because that will have changed because of the act of you observing it. If you're observing its momentum or its velocity, you're not going to be able to determine exactly where it is. Just one of those things. Through that act of, the observer is the person that imparts reality onto something. That's, exactly what a professional wrestling watching experience is. If you're going in there with expectations that are, I've had kind of a bad week. Oh, I'm going in, I'm going to watch this and it's all going to be the same. And, I'm not really feeling it today. And you go and you watch, it'll be that. And that will just be what you experience from it. If you're going in there and you're like, okay, this time, it's been a bad week, but I'm here. I'm going to watch some wrestling. I'm going to enjoy the crowd noise. I'm going to enjoy myself. I'm going to see if I can see any intricacies. I'm going to see if people put any little hidden treats for me to view, if I've not seen a particular bit of tech. For me personally, if someone busts out something that I've not seen transition wise or turning an opponent in a way I didn't think was possible, that pleases me on a deep level, and it's all about that. your expectations and your observations are what's going to change reality for you. If you're going online and reading Twitter and reading every negative thing that people come out with, you're going to enter with a negative viewpoint. You're not going to enjoy yourself as much. If you're watching something, Summer Rae for the WWE a while back, long time ago, I was watching this. I was having a great time because I went in there with my preconceived assumption, oh, she's actually a tremendous professional wrestler and she's deliberately being as terrible as she can be. And it made everything so good. Watching it with that in mind, fantastic experience. But it's all about what you're going in with, what you're taking with you, and how you, as an observer, are forming that reality in front of you. That's, what I think anyway.
It could be true because you're right. I did go there, and when I last went before, I was like, "Well, I know exactly what I'm going to get." There was a slight difference, though. There was a couple of people. There was, there was like CPF and people like that. So there's a different kind of, performer as such. So there was a bit of differentiation in there. But you're right. Maybe the time before that, I was like, "This is just going to be the same old." And I sat there for 4.5 hours, and I was like, "Yeah, this is same." And maybe my perception of me going in there with that perception just kind of done me, instead of me going in and go, right, let's see, I don't know, let's see if I can notice something different this time to when I went last time. Someone's going to pull out a different move, or someone's going to do something a bit different. Maybe I should go in with that mindset instead of going in with that.
I mean, you might come away disappointed, but if you go in with that viewpoint, you might come away going, actually, that was awesome. You never know.
Yeah, indeed. I'll have to think about that next time I go. It won't be too long before I go again, so we'll have a look. But let's talk about yourself now, Gideon. Talk about how you got into wrestling and what made it for you. What was that point when you were like, I want to do this?
So when I was a wee sprog, I didn't have Sky in the household or any of that, not one for technology, but had a grandparent who was into her, Sky, who loved her tennis, who loved her darts, who loved professional wrestling. So I went around her house occasionally and got to see Bret Hart versus the Mountie.
Yes.
And fantastic. Fell in love. The Mountie's amazing. I'm a bit biased against Bret Hart, but that's fine. I enjoyed it. Came on to Channel 4 in 2000 with the Royal Rumble.
Yeah.
You had your Sunday night heats, you had all this that was suddenly accessible for someone like me that was relying on terrestrial. And I remember vividly Cactus Jack, not Cactus Jack at the time, Mick Foley walking down to the ring, convinced he couldn't beat Triple H. Just convinced. And then saying, I don't think I can beat you, but I think I know someone who can. Taking off the shirt, it's the same guy with a different shirt. Completely different persona, completely different. That hooked me. So from the entertainment side of things, absolutely, America got there first for me and won me over with the performance of it. And then as I grew more and watched more, I realized, Owen Hart, fantastic. Where did he learn how to do this stuff? Canada, fantastic. Let's watch some Canadians. Oh, they're really good. All of these guys, oh wow, they've all been to Japan. Let's watch some of this stuff. Oh Jesus, that's really good, and started to love it from there. But yeah, it was just a kind of ongoing journey where I was a fan of one, not really into any fandoms. I don't like talking to other people that like things I like, because again, once you start talking to other people who like things you like, their views on it start to affect the way that you watch it, and then you may get less enjoyment out of it. I just prefer to keep my opinions to myself, mainly on what I like and what I dislike. And kept going quietly. Heard there was British wrestling in England. Went down to a couple of shows. They were all right, they were okay. Not great, but not bad. Then heard about Rev Pro in Portsmouth. Decided, start training down there. I won't make anything of myself. 27 at the time, I think I started in the ring. Thought, I'll never do anything, but I'll get to learn. And that's what I like. So I went down, started working with Andy Quilden and Andy Simmons at the time.
Yeah.
And, kept going stubbornly, smashing myself into a brick wall after brick wall, and just fell into it, really.
Interesting. And you mentioned there the Rev Pro school in Portsmouth. How people need to, I think, realize that there is these schools around, and I know it sounds stupid, but there is good wrestling schools around when you can get there, and you really need to learn because it is not just as simple as getting in that ring for sure. I mean, I've done it briefly, and to my detriment, never again. It hurt, and you've got to learn everything about it. But what was the one of the most things that you've always, maybe from your first training session, that you've always took with you?
The ropes hurt more than you think. Uh,
Yes.
the rings, especially in the UK, hurt far more than you think. Uh, the turnbuckles feel a lot higher than they look
Mm.
when you climb up them. Um, just being creating volume in a ring takes more energy than anything else. So anyone you notice that's loud has far more cardiovascular conditioning than you'd expect. These kind of things, these little things that you wouldn't think of. It's just surprising, you know. I remember coming away from my first ever training session, and my nose just erupted in blood on the way back because I'd hit the ropes too many times. Really did my neck in, and my body just couldn't take the physical abuse for those first few sessions. But it's a lot more demanding than people expect.
Yeah, and is it important that you get those? Maybe this is maybe again a bit bored to my detriment, that you get those few sessions out of the way, and then it not that it becomes easier, but the body kind, I suppose, gets used to it. I don't know if, how does it still take time to do that?
I mean, it's certain, there's a point where you just can't feel anything anymore, which is, I guess, okay in some way. Your calluses form, your skin toughens up, you get used to anything. Human beings are remarkably resilient. So whatever you do, you'll eventually get used to it. But it's up to you. I'm not going to sit here and anybody can be a professional wrestler.
Hmm.
That's an absolute truth. Anybody in the world could train themselves, dedicate themselves to learning the craft, to learning the sport, and become a professional wrestler. Anyone can do it. Whether it's right for you, that's another story. That's your own personal thing to decide. If you go in there and it hurts far too much and you don't enjoy it that much, there's no shame in being like, hey, I just want to watch. That's probably wiser at that point. If you go in there and you go, okay, this hurt, I'm going to keep going though, and then you keep going and you keep going and you keep going, you're probably going to be a professional wrestler.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely. So I want to go back to 2002. You was in the United Empire in Japan. Not 2002, sorry,
I was
2002.
going to say
I
it's a
missed it. I missed
very
it.
long time
I
ago.
missed I missed it too. My apologies. You was over in Japan. It was yourselves, the Great Oak Coast, it was United Empire, Cole Fletcher, Mark Davis,
Yeah.
Ospreay. You'd actually had you took on FTR with Gabe against Gabe and Ricky Knight Jr. and people like that. Going against FTR, I have to. Are they, as you know, and this is again probably a stupid question. I always think they're the wrestlers that should have been around in the 90s when tag team wrestling old school was a thing. I don't, they're 2024 version of a 1990 tag team. But anyway, going in there, how was that for you going in there with FTR? And also talk about those first experiences in Japan for you, because it is a totally different animal to over here in the UK.
Mm. So we'll go for the FTR stuff first,
Yeah.
then we'll
Yep.
talk about Japan.
Okay.
So FTR, very much respect them. Fantastic guys. They didn't know what to make of me. Obviously,
Yeah.
I'm not what they're used to, I think, in terms of professional wrestling, and that's fine. But I will say, I think it's guys Cash, I believe his name is. I'm no good with names, no good with faces.
Cash is the
Uh,
one with hair.
yes, the one with hair. There was a point in that match. I had done something to him, decided to turn my back to try and walk away. He kicked me in the asshole so hard. It was the hardest kick I've ever felt, and it was right on the hole. He missed both cheeks. He missed everything else. His foot just went into my asshole and propelled me over the top rope. So I think that's more of a lasting memory than anything else I have of them. Was just that was the most unbelievable amount of pain I felt in a wrestling match, and yeah, it was very enjoyable. Great match. I had Mark Davis there and Carl Fletcher there
Yeah.
to look after me, which was always nice. I do like minders, but it was a unique experience, that's for sure. And Japan, I went over to Japan again. I liked what I watched, very much so, and I had that kind of expectation. Hey, I know that's Japan style. I can do that. That's fine. I'm still just going to be who I am as a person. And I'm going to try and annoy certain people. But, the United Empire out there, who I really care about as a human being, you know, love everyone, of course. The Great Okan is the single greatest professional wrestler I've ever seen in my life. Genuine speaking, he literally has everything that I like about professional wrestling. He's incredibly talented. He's got the background to back it up. Hanare too, fantastic backgrounds in true, combat sports. They both have the mind for it. Great Okan is determined to show that you do not have to be, a generic wrestler. You do not have to do what has come before you to achieve great success. You can mold your own way. You can do what you think is unique and you think is cool, and you can find your own style. And that's what I love about the Great Cup. So going out there, knowing that, all I want to do is go, hey, this guy is incredible.
Yeah.
Every one of these guys in the United Empire, best athletes in the world, right? Hands down, they are the best wrestlers in the world. If you've seen the Super Junior Tag League this year, TJP and Akira are the best junior tag team in the world ever, full stop, hands down. In my mind, they are the best tag team in the world ever, hands down. You can't watch a match of theirs without understanding that they are just that good.
Yeah.
So going out there, being around everyone, and just doing what I could to help people understand how special that is and how lucky they are to have that and be watching that and be part of that. Watching Aussie Open versus Great Okan and Hanare in World Tag League in 2022. No one understands how much of a special match that is and how good a match that was, because they were going out there to prove something to themselves. No one else, just themselves. And that's tremendously special. Obviously, Carl Fletcher's now a little dickhead, but that's neither here nor there. People change. Mark Davis, still an awesome dude. Very, very happy that he's, back healthy. But that's neither here nor there. So going out there, my only goal was, hey, if we treat professional wrestling in Britain like a kind of mix between that spectacle and a mix of the sport, treat professional wrestling in America like a purely entertainment product. You want to be badass and you want to be all that kind of jazz. Go out to go out to Japan. I decided to treat it like an anime. I want to be that support character that is nowhere near the main guy of any fucking show that you watch, but is the one that people go, hey, that guy's cool and he likes these guys and he really supports these guys. So these guys are, incredible and they're awesome. I like them more. That's my only goal. And it was great fun to do that.
Yeah, it looked great fun. I want to ask that because Japan's got a lot of great factions over there. Obviously, the big one was obviously,
they've got two great factions.
I was going to maybe talk about them now, potentially. Obviously, the Bullet Club and United Empire were the biggest. Well, it looked amazing from what we saw over here. There was a lot of stuff going on over there. But how was it difficult with factions over in Japan to go? It looked like, I don't know how, I don't like to use the word real, but, did you have to perhaps do separate things? Not, as wrestlers sometimes do, they don't, back in the old 80s, you know what I mean? Okay. Back in the 80s is a prime
example. I'll pause you there. You're talking to the wrong person here, right? So, when the pandemic hit,
yes,
obviously terrible.
Yeah.
It worked perfectly for who I am as an individual because I got to be away from people. Yes. I wasn't going to hang out with any of those, guys if they wanted me to or not. Happy to hang out with the Empire. Fantastic. Love those guys. Anyone else, I'm more than happy not talking to them. I've never had a problem with anything like that. Just because you're, in the same field of work as I am, I don't care. been no problem.
That is excellent. No, that is really that totally answered my question. What I was going to say is back in the 80s, faces with the faces deals, and they never mixed, because the whole kayfabe thing. But you've answered that question
Oh yeah,
very
no, I just don't like anyone. So
exactly.
it's
You
just
just don't like anyone. That's it. That's a perfect way to answer it. As we start to wrap up, Gideon, look, still got some time left in 2024. What are your plans? What you've got? What have you got coming up? And where, if you want people to interact with you, where can they?
hey, listen, I still don't know if I'm going to wrestle again.
Hmm.
So my plans at the moment are enjoy myself on commentary.
Yes.
Uh, Remind people that we've lost some really good people this year. As much as I can, go back, watch the matches, appreciate what we had when we had it. Um, Watch more professional wrestling and just enjoy what you're watching. If you're not enjoying it, watch something else. Find something that speaks to you, watch it, and have a great time. I'm just going to be talking anywhere I go. And if I get back in the ring, I'll get back in the ring. Who knows? You can find me on Twitter. I'm not calling it X, at Lord Gideon Grey. That's with an EY, not an AY.
Yeah.
You can find me on Instagram at Deliciously Evil. I'm not going to tell you how to spell that. Too many E's.
Yeah.
And that's about it. Other than that, I'm a very private, quiet person. I will read any comments you leave. I will read any notes you send me. I won't respond to you, but I will read them. Uh, that's me.
Brilliant stuff. Well, I just need to quickly plug Ignite Wrestling Pro's Curtain Call Free final show of the year for Ignite. It's been a great 2024. Headline matches on that. We are going to see the Ignite debut of Spike Trivet, the Vulture. Does have gold in his sights, that gold being the Ignite Wrestling Champion Tommy Kyle's gold. Inside, he wasn't going to come for our championship. In that way. But our championship is going to be on the line in a little bit of an unusual manner. So our champion, Mr. Mark True, I don't know what I've done wrong in a previous life to get make Mark.
Mark's great. What are you talking about?
He is great. I'm only messing.
Come on.
But anyway, Mark, after his successful first defense, now has to defend it. So he successfully done it in a fatal four-way last time with two of his opponents in this time, but he's defending it in a tag match this time. So if he or his partner, Kieran Lacey, gets pinned, their opponents, Danny Black and Joe Lando of CPF, the ones that pin them, will become champion. So a confusing Vince Russo style way for the Hitting the Turnbuckle Championship to be on the line at Ignite. But there is less than 30 tickets left for the last show of the year. So go to Eventbrite, type in Curtain Call Free, and you will see that. And I will see you there, of course, because our championship will be on the line. But Gideon, it's been great talking some stuff with you, some wrestling, some English, some Japan, everything like that. I like to hear the voice of the commentary when you're on again. So we'll certainly like to hear that when it's on. But if we don't see you before, all the very best for the remainder of the year, and we will obviously catch up in the future soon.
Absolutely. Have a good night.
You too, guys. This has been the Hitting the Turnbuckle podcast with Gideon Grey, or Lord Gideon Grey, and myself, Mr. Adam Cousins. And until next time, everybody, buckle down, stay safe, and good night.